Welcome to On Film with Kevin McCarthy. I have Robert Englund today talking all about everything. We're talking about your Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame coming up on October 31st. We're talking about Freddy Krueger. We're talking about your incredible career. You're a classically trained actor. We're going to get into everything about the work you've done over the years. Welcome to my show.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
It's an honor to have you here. First, I want to start off with this because the communal experience of the theatrical experience of seeing movies in theaters is kind of really why I wanted to start this show. I wanted to talk about why movies are so important, why seeing films in theaters is so important, but also diving into filmmaking and acting craft. But what was the movie for you growing up that you saw in a movie theater that gave you that understanding of a communal experience?
You know, I'm not sure on the communal aspect, but I do know for a moment of time I wanted to be Danny Kaye, and that must have been, the Chalice from the Palace, with Angela Lansbury, the court jester, I think that movie was. That was influential and gave me a great sense of joy. I remember also, and I'm really young now, at Grauman's Chinese Theater, the old Grauman's Chinese on Hollywood Boulevard. My mother had a little crush on James Mason, and I remember her teasing herself about that. And we went to see Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Wow.
By Jules Verne, which I believe won the Oscar for Best Special Effects that year, beating out another cult favorite of mine, Them, the Giant Ants with James Whitmore. But I remember seeing that movie, and it was magical. And Kirk Douglas singing "I've Got a Whale of a Tale to Tell You, Lads," and Peter Lorre and James Mason, but more than that giant squid terrified me. But it was also the beginning, I think, of laying down a foundation for my love of horror and fantasy and science fiction films. But when that sailor gets thrown down into the interior, down the spiral metal stairs into the interior of the Nautilus, and he's got those welts on his face from the giant suckers on the tentacles of the giant squid with its beak, clapping, in the background. I was like, terrified, but awestruck at the same time, and I think that's the real beginning of that. And of course, when you're in a theater and you're sitting there in the dark and it's a musical or it's an action movie or it's just an extraordinary special effect, everybody has that intake of breath together, and there's that collective cathartic moment, that is the only other time you feel it is in the magic of live theater. It's that same thing that can happen in live theater. And what you were saying, about the demise of the movie-going experience. And I keep wanting that to come back stronger. And I think they're going to figure out a way to do that, whether it's reclining seats or mini pizzas or however they're or bonus points to see another film for free. But I just got off the plane, and I sat behind a grown man, successful, good-looking guy, late 30s, and he was watching the new Tom Cruise
Mission Impossible
on his phone.
Oh.
And I'd also had that experience with Avatar. I saw a guy watching Avatar. On his phone. And I was like, I said, look, you're in first class. At the very least, watch it on a laptop.
Yes.
You could probably find it on that screen embedded in the back of the seat in front of you. But on your phone,
I know.
You obviously, you're in the front of the plane. You don't need to see it with me. You don't need to, you don't need your bonus points or your free screening on your phone. But it's like that. I want to say to him at the end, you haven't seen Mission Impossible.
Thank
you.
You
haven't seen Avatar. You haven't seen Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia. You haven't seen that if you've watched it on a cell phone. Now, cell phones are great for news and talk shows and sitcoms and talking head things, but you don't want to watch those kind of movies. You could probably even watch The Sopranos on your phone, but not, Mission Impossible, not Avatar.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know,
you're literally talking to somebody who is so passionate about this. Anytime a friend of mine texts me and says, "Oh, I just watched the new Christopher Nolan movie Oppenheimer on the plane," I'm like, "You have not seen the film.
film. No,
Like
they, yeah.
you have not watched the movie. If you, I mean, again, and listen, I do want to say this because not everybody has access to go to movie theaters.
Right.
Not everybody has the access to see the things that we're lucky to see movies the way we do in
a
California.
A lot of people have a decent sized flat screen
Yes,
now.
it's true.
Which is certainly a lesser sin.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. I speak about this all the time, and it's interesting because I've been collecting my movie ticket stubs since I was a kid, and the show, the logo, which is kind of like a mock ticket stub, has the date July 3rd, 1991 on it because that's the day Terminator 2 opened up in theaters, my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
Did you collect anything at all growing up that's kind of similar to ticket stubs?
I loved film and I loved movies, and I mowed lawns till I had blisters on my hands because we loved the Saturday matinees. My friends and I, and you'd have to spend the whole morning talking to, convincing different mothers to take you, to the matinee. And I saw incredible. I mean, I remember Forbidden Planet, and I think I didn't keep the ticket stub, but there was I think I stole out of the lobby. And that wasn't a lobby card or a poster, but there was maybe on a sandwich board, there was a picture of Robbie the robot. And I'm Robert Englund. I'm Robbie. I was a Robbie as a child. And that was, a connection there, even though there was many other things I love about that movie, including the memory of I think it was the third grade, my friend Ronnie, and finally he's sitting in the back of the class, and we could not figure out what the image was of the monster from the id in Forbidden Planet. The monster of the id from Walter Pidgeon, Prospero from The Tempest, William Shakespeare, transported into sci-fi. And then my friend Ronnie's doodling. He's that kid in class that could draw really well. He would draw like flaming eyeballs on our little blue 3-ring notebooks. And Ronnie, from the back of the class, he goes, "Oh, yeah, it's a saber-toothed tiger." And we all got up and went back, and from his memory, he had outlined that animation of that, and it was a muscular saber-toothed tiger. But I remember that was the kind of things like seeing a Twilight Zone and having to line up before class, and then the kids behind you were whispering, "That's not how to serve man. It's a cookbook. It's a cookbook." We were like, all of us, that was so important to us, that part of the popular culture. And movies were too. I mean, I remember going through the Hammer film phase of saturated color and Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. And I think that Lucas and Spielberg also loved those guys, when they were kids, and because of their great faces, and they weren't afraid to act. They were still acting back then, not behaving. And so I remember that, Dwight Little, who directed me in Phantom of the Opera, he and I both had that drive-in movie, saturated color, Hammer film, middle 60s, early 60s experience with Herbert Lom and all those guys, and how much we loved that, and it was, that vampire films were a little bit erotic, teased it a little bit, which was fun for a teenage boy. But yeah, I had all kinds of milestones during those years, and then the occasional, I just was blown away by James Dean, and I remember On the Waterfront, and I knew something was special was going on with that kind of work, But I remember liking Carl Malden and Lee J. Cobb just as much as I liked Brando, and but yeah, those were all important moments, and they feed into who you become and what your taste evolves into.
So you just said something to me that was interesting about acting versus behaving, and I wanted you to elaborate on that a bit. And I thought that was an interesting comment in terms of performance.
Well, here's the thing. I come from the theater, hence theatrical, and you have to get it out, hopefully, to the people that sit in the back as well as the people in front. I had an experience years ago. I saw Jennifer Jason Leigh do Proof on Broadway, but I was in the second row, and it was miraculous. It was absolutely magical. But I know people that saw the same show from several rows back in the orchestra and weren't as impressed. You have to get that. It's that thing we call getting it beyond the footlights. And then you come to Hollywood, and I'm from Hollywood, but you know, and you come into film, and film sees you differently, and it sees your potential differently, and it sees your type differently than on stage. And the tricks, a lot of the tricks and techniques that you can use in the theater, and that aesthetic distance, they're not there any longer. Now that camera is in that intimate zone, especially once you get into single coverage, that has to be very private and intimate with a performance. And so what happens after you've done your work on the character and stuff is there's a little voice in your head, and actors don't like to admit this, but the little voice is saying in film work, don't act. Oh God, don't get caught acting. Well, my contract says actor, but I understand that, and I understand when stuff can get false or hammy. But what we have to remember is there's a time and place for that. There's all kinds of comedy. There's farce. There's romantic comedy. You know, there's a drawing room comedy. You know, there's slapstick. There's all these kinds of comedy. There's lots of different kinds of drama. From melodrama to tearjerkers to documentary style. And so you have to have everybody on the same page, but there's still that voice. And what happened to me is when I did Freddy, I was finally able to bring some of my tricks from the theater and use them, you know, play with my voice. You know, it wouldn't be right for me to talk to you in that voice. Here, it doesn't go with Robert Englund, but it goes with what that character looks like after I've done 4 hours, you know, with prosthetics and glue, and so I could play with my voice. I could dance him a little bit, you know. Surfers walk foot over foot on a surfboard, and I tried doing that, just an old thing surfers do when we goof around, but it was a great way of changing up the way I move in a dolly shot, where the camera's moving with me as Freddy, and it kind of cat-like. And the confidence of being underneath all that makeup and not worried about a blemish or my bald spot or any of that. And the fact that I was in a surreal dreamscape, a kind of nightmare landscape of imagination in the subconscious of whichever character was dreaming of me, I knew I didn't have to be reality bound. I knew that I didn't have to be behavioral. I knew that I could paint myself into the frame and I could wear the furniture a little bit. Freddy could cross his legs like this and say, "Class, come to attention." You know, I didn't have to just be real, kitchen sink real, as the English call it, the British call it. And so that behavioral thing, now a lot of times you want to get into that behavioral thing, but you also want to find your breaking points and stuff. I mean, the finest acting I've seen recently is on that extraordinary show with Stephen Graham called Adolescence.
Yeah.
The boy in that, you know. But I've always admired really good child actors, not the pushy ones with the pushy stage mom, but just extraordinary work that you see all the time over the last, especially the last 25 years or so, because there's that innocence of they absolutely embrace make-believe and pretend. And if you remember when you were a child and you had your toy soldiers or your little trucks, or you were staying home from school and you were sick and you were making mountains, you know, out of the blankets, you know, in your mom and dad's bedroom and putting your little toy soldiers up there and giving them voices and you just totally surrendered to that. And good child actors can still do it. We have so much information as adults, and we have acting classes, and we have acting techniques, and we have, you know, showbiz biographies that inform us, and we watch so many films and miniseries and streamers that inform us, that I think sometimes that gets between us and the inherent theatrical truth of a piece, the tone of a piece. You know, you can, and we see it all the time. People just, there's not quite the right tone, and things that you think are going to be wonderful films that you're looking forward to, and they just don't land because people aren't on the right page. You know, people are working differently, and it may be the director that's working differently, or the editor too, because they have, in many respects, the final say. And so, when I say behavioral, I've done behavioral acting. I know what that is, and it's very reactive. And a lot of teachers say acting is reacting. But you also bring an agenda to every scene. I bring an agenda to the show. I come in here and I don't want my bald spot to show. I want to look good. I don't want to stumble. I don't want to stumble over words with you. I want to remember, you know, the name of actors that we both like, that we're going to, you know, share. If I was, you know, Warren Oates or Strother Martin or somebody that I really loved and wanted to be in the early 70s. I want that to be, you know, to have access to that. So, and that's part of an agenda I bring in here, and an energy when I'm talking to you. So you can't just react because you're in a scene for a reason. And that's that distinction between proactive or agenda pursuing or behavioral reacting acting. I remember on 24, and he's a wonderful, wonderful actor, Kiefer Sutherland. And I complimented him a couple of years ago. He was great in the Kane Mutiny Court Martial. You know, he playing the Humphrey Bogart role, Captain Queeg. But Kiefer invented a style for his leading man, his hero, on that show. He also had to pitch a lot of exposition in his dialogue. He had to move the plot along with his dialogue, which is not the way we speak in real life. And Kiefer's smart, and he knew that. He'd done a lot of movies by then. And he also had to, you know, be violent and deal with the action and fight scenes and things like that. But he made that choice to whisper a lot of his dialogue. And Kiefer has a beautiful voice. And he did it. He mastered it. And he threw away a lot of the exposition that way. Didn't call attention to it. The fact that he was teaching the audience some of the plot. Very wise choice for an actor, a young actor. But after that show, 100 actors started imitating him. And I did several shows where people were whispering so low. I was as close as I am to you, couldn't hear them. Couldn't hear my cue, you know. And it became, people borrowed from that. They saw what he was doing. It hides the fact that you're pitching the plot, which may seem artificial to you, but the audience needs that. It's the plot. And everybody started to whisper. And it was like, that's that thing that can happen where a style of acting or a behavioral style can become something that we maybe we disdain. What people might call, you know, some people call soap opera acting, you know. But that's become a style. For me, it's not anything to disdain. It's a style with which they have to work because they're talking so much plot. And behavioral, if you err in that direction, you're just listening and reacting. What happens to the agenda of why you are even there and who you like and who you dislike? And where do you manifest that in your performance?
You know, it's interesting, and I don't know why my mind went to this, but I was thinking about like everything you were just saying about paying attention to all these details and the elements, like you're talking about your physicality and the surfboard. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I think you have about 7 minutes or so of screen time, which is remarkable for me because when I think back to that movie, I think of you the whole film. And as an actor,
well, people do talk about me a lot,
right? But I also think that that's a testament to the presence that you had when you're in those 7 minutes or so, because it's almost like Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs. I think he has very minimal screen time in that film as well, yet you feel his presence. He's talked about a lot, but every time you were on screen, you left a mark, and we feel scared that you're going to show up again at any point. Can you speak about like those conversations with Wes initially and going, all right, it's going to be minimal screen time, but it's going to be such an effective character that's going to be the whole film in a way?
We really didn't discuss that. And when you're working on film, you're always there much longer and you're much busier than your amount of screen time. You know, back when I first started, I was talking to the great actor Lance Henriksen about this. You'd have a small part, but you get hired for run of the show. You might be there for 3 months, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, even though you only had 3 little scenes in the movie. But it was great learning for young actors. You could watch, you know, Sidney Lumet work, or you could watch Bob Rafelson work every day, even with your days off. You just wanted to be there watching Jeff Bridges be fresh, you know, and things like that, and learning from them. And I think I'd had this experience in theater. I'd done a George Bernard Shaw play, and George Bernard Shaw had made a wager that he could do a comedy for the West End, the Broadway of London, making a dentist the hero, the leading man. And he wrote this play, You Never Can Tell. And I was in it playing one of the twins, the children in it. We weren't children, we were supposed to be adolescents. But we were like twins, not identical twins, but, you know, born at the same time. And she's my sister. And we had this entrance, I think it was in Act 3. And you know, we'd been in the play in several scenes at that time. And I remember on opening night, the actress, her name was Brenda, and we had this upstage entrance. And the other characters had been talking about us prior to our entrance. And Shaw had engineered it so perfectly. When we burst through the doors, we practically got a standing ovation. It was literally a minute and a half of laughter. The laughter began, it rolled all the way to the back of the theater and all the way forward. And you have to fill that, you know, and she and I, we looked out sort of like toward the exit lights, and we looked at each other, and we looked back out, you know, and you sort of stop time. You're stretching time. Neither of us, including the director, had any clue that laugh was there. In the play. And it was this thing I learned, and it's about people talking about your character and how it gives you such life. And how that life, when you're being talked about by other characters, informs you. And I'd also learned from a wonderful, wonderful acting coach, Jeff Corey, taught Nicholson and Bruce Stern, I think. But Jeff Corey said once, sometimes he says, you'll be having a problem with your character if you can't really see it in your mind's eye or your research and you find a difficulty. He said, go back and read the whole play, or go back and read the screenplay. See what other people think of you. And you can form your character from that sometimes. So I knew by the time I did Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I was aware of the fact that tons of dialogue in that movie are about me.
Which informs the scene you're going to enter.
Which also gives me an advantage every time I show up.
Interesting.
People want to see me. People are waiting for me. You know, they're waiting for Freddy. And so every time you appear, it's like an entrance, you know. And you know, and that's important. Entrances and exits are very important. You can apologize for them and hide. I worked with a wonderful actress on a television series once, and she was the star. And she would hide from the camera. And then when she had a line that she wanted a close-up for, then she would turn and look at you. You know, she'd busy herself with her coffee over here. And then she'd go, oh, really? You know, and boom. She knew the editor would go for that moment because the other one was the back of her head. Or they didn't want to cut profile to full face. And I learned a lot working with her because you don't want to saturate on television, which part of the formula is talking heads. You don't, if you're a regular, you don't want to saturate yourself, your performance. You don't want too much of, you don't want too much of that selfie pose, that 3/4 glam shot with the light in this eye. No. You want to hide from that a little bit. And then it becomes a punctuation mark, for the performance. And it should be script or plot or something that's really important. I can remember having a scene once, and I had the most important line in the scene, which is Grandma's dead. And we were eating. It was a dinner scene, and I remember like reaching forward and getting the salt. Please pass the salt. And I was salting my chicken or something. I can't remember, but I saw it. I saw the show. When I reached forward, I looked great. The light was in my eyes. It was a great image, and I dropped the salt shaker for a second, which was organic, and I probably swore to myself it wasn't on camera. And picked it up, and then I got a close-up with that. But I was clear across on the other side of the table when I said, "Grandma's dead." And to me, it was obvious. It should either be a close-up on me, or a close-up on the person I'm telling Granny's kicked the bucket to.
Right.
But I mean, it's just weird, and you realize, I can't play God with film performance. That's the director and the editor. And sometimes it's the editor, And also when I've directed, I realize how you don't go chronologically like it's in the script. You can shuffle. And some scenes can be flash forwards or flashbacks or premonitions, or you can repeat them, And you realize that film plays with time. That's what the magic of film is. It's slowing time down and it's speeding time up and it's flashing forward and flashing back. And you have to surrender to the way it's going to tell the story, when you're an actor. So you have to have all those options, at your disposal.
I just want to say I really appreciate this conversation so far because I love hearing you speak about performance and movies, and it's interesting because I've been watching your work since I was a kid, and to be sitting here across from you just having a filmmaking conversation is pretty surreal to me. I know it's been 41 years since the first Nightmare.
First Nightmare, yeah.
Yeah, the first Nightmare. And so now I know you've been asked every question in the book about becoming Freddy. But this podcast obviously is a craft-driven podcast, and it's meant to inform audiences about the craft and the decisions that people make to bring characters in film to life. So if I could just bring us back to that beginning stage of Freddy and finding him. I know you've talked about it and told stories about being in the makeup chair and kind of finding the voice, but if you could just walk through kind of your memory now of that initial moment where you go, there he is. I got him.
Well, I found, and this isn't the freshest disclosure, but I'll get right to my memory of it. I was very near where we are now, in David Miller's first little house in the valley, San Fernando Valley, as Bing Crosby sings. And he had a barber chair, a cool little barber chair, and we were in the garage. And David had just come off of the Michael Jackson Thriller video. He'd done a special effects makeup with the god Rick Baker,
Wow.
on that. And we were refining the Freddy makeup. We still had some drips, a flange, as if like a bad sunburn, the skin was still peeling off the burns. I think one ear was incredibly chewed up. Looked great, but we were we knew we were going to have problems with the flange, the dripping, melting look with continuity. And I loved that ear. I can't remember why we changed it, except it had to completely cover my ear and fit on it. And it maybe gave me a headache or something. I can't remember. Anyway, we're there, and I'm looking in the mirror, and it's been a long session. I think maybe we were finishing up, waiting for Wes to arrive and put in his 2 cents worth. And but the basic Freddy design was there. It was real close. And David had these great Japanese brushes that he used to paint the detail in, and get the blend in between my real skin by my eye and the prosthetic piece. And he'd accumulated a lot of glue, colostomy bag, medical adhesive, which they use on these beautiful Japanese painting brushes. And it was like a little spear, and he poked me. And I think I swore, I think I went, damn it, David. Yeah. David, damn. I don't know, it just stuck in my throat. But I saw it in the mirror. And it's me. It's not me. It's Freddy. And I didn't go, damn it, David. Watch out, David. I went, damn it, David. And I caught myself in the mirror, and I went, the voice goes with that guy.
Wow.
That voice goes. So that opened the door for the voice. I talk fast. They were going to put a little treatment of very speed on me to bring up the bass in my voice. So if I say, welcome to prime time, bitch, and they put a little very speed on it, it comes out, welcome to prime time, bitch, but it still sounds real. I don't sound like that old Twilight Zone episode, where the robot's winding out of energy. So I found the voice there. This is a story I've said before, so now you know that one. But the other one is I was on the set first week. I've been wearing that damn glove all day, 14, 15-hour days. I walked by one of those cheap 5 and dime store narrow mirrors that they have backstage for wardrobe, so you can check yourself in it for continuity and stuff. And I caught myself, and I realized I had the shoulder dip down low, And I've told this story a lot, but the thing was, it's like I was accommodating the weight of the glove, and I just dropped my right shoulder a little bit. And I looked in the mirror, but I kind of liked it. It kind of looked interesting for the character with the baggy sweater and the fedora, snap brim fedora. And I said, what does that remind me of? And I went, I look like a gunslinger, And so that little tiny, simple opening of Gunsmoke, cowboy movie memory of mine, and looking like the gunslinger, all I had to think was gunslinger at the beginning of every day. So now I've got the voice, and now I've got the posture. Then the old surfer trick of walking foot over foot on a surfboard, which is a little dance-like, a little balletic. But if I did it, if I did it like when we were kidding around on the beach talking about our great ride, walking foot over foot, if I did that with one arm dipped down and a little jaunty when Wes or somebody was doing one of their dolly shots or walking along with Freddy, it just looked different. It looked very cat-like. And then I thought, cat-like, and I thought, Freddy toys with his victims like a cat with a mouse before he kills it. And that became that kind of animal thing that some acting coaches use. You can perhaps find an animal reference that you can use. They're weird tricks that actors use. And then also that first week, I'd been up since like 4 a.m. in makeup, and I, working all alone with Wes, walking downstairs and walking on catwalks and all the different, dramatic lighting and stuff. And I think I cut through a wall of muslin, with the hero glove with the sharp blades. And I'm sitting there, and it's on Cahuenga in Hollywood. It's the old Desilu Studios. It's summer. It's hot. It's 1984. And the Olympics are here, and the traffic is terrible. And I've been working all morning, and I'm in my early 30s, and I have a hit TV show. And while I'm doing this, I started to have second thoughts. I was hot. I was itchy. I was grumpy. What have I gotten myself into? And in waltz Johnny Depp and Heather Langenkamp. Banker's hours, right? It's noon. I've been there, 6 hours already. And they come waltzing in, and Heather looks like a composite of Ingrid Bergman and Brooke Shields. And Johnny is like just beautiful. And I know we hate the word moist, so I'll say dewy. They both had the most beautiful, beautiful complexions you've ever seen, and eyelashes so long you could land a plane on them. And Johnny had that great dry Elvis rockabilly hair, And my girlfriend, who was at Yale then, with Courtney Vance and Chris Noth and everybody. She got one look at Johnny. She said he's going to be a star. And and Heather, I think was studying Russian at Stanford. Smart, beautiful girl. And I looked over and I was, and then the makeup girl gave them little pink battery operated fans. I mean, they looked, I didn't know what was coming out of her purse. I thought they were dildos for a second. I mean, it was, but they were little battery operated fans to keep them cool, because they were the ingenue and the juvenile, and they wanted to be cool. They didn't want to sweat. And here these beautiful, they don't need makeup. They're so beautiful. And they get little fans to keep them cool. It was like, what am I? Sliced salami? What's going on here? I said, I've got 12 movies in the can. I've starred with Henry Fonda. I'm getting basted with Vaseline and KY jelly, and I went, wait a minute. That anger that I was feeling, that doubting the part, my envy of their youth and their beauty and their whole careers ahead of them, I could use that. I can sit here right now and remember that moment. We remember things, right?
Yeah.
I can see them sitting there. So that became my sense memory. That became my trick to use every time I had to wind up and get angry with the kids and taunt them and everything. Instead of just acting, ooh, scary, I would just remember that. That jealousy, that envy. And because and the fact that they had this whole future ahead of them, and maybe I'd made a mistake, piling on this makeup. And what does Freddy do? He kills children. He's a child killer. Think of that as a dark, poetic Jim Morrison song, child killer. Like one of many songs on a Doors album. Or think of it as a punk rock poem, or the name of a punk rock group. Tonight at Madame Wong's West, it's the Child Killers. 10 o'clock. Darby Crash opening up for them. But it was that thing where I thought, aha, I can take that. Freddy's killing children of the future. I can be envious of their future. I can play that. I can make that a real sense memory acting trick to use. So now I had the body language, okay, I had the voice, and I had this little acting trick, internal acting trick, that's very personal that I can bring up. It's real to me, and I can use that with all of the kids in all of the sequels and the franchise. It was just something I had there. I could use it right now if I had to, because it's just like it's a synapse. It's a neuron that's there. It's a memory. It
shifts you into...
It's a memory. Yeah, it's like when they used to, make kids cry because they remembered their dog dying. It's just you can always do that. That memory of your dog dying doesn't go away. You can sit there and think about that, and sooner or later you can get there.
What's your relationship to scenes that Freddy is not physically in doing the kills? So, for example, like when we see like in the first film, when we see the sequence with Tina and she's up on the ceiling of the room and she's being moved around, and like you're not physically there in that moment. I'm just curious what your relationship is to those sequences when he's not physically there, but the character's doing the work.
Well, the one with Tina on the ceiling is, I think, a classic moment in cinema now.
Greatest effect shots.
I think it's a great, like Fred Astaire dancing around the room or something. It's a great, scary, disconcerting. What's the word I want to use? What it does to the audience, but it really throws the audience off balance.
Oh yeah, I still look at it today. I'm like, how did Wes do that?
But the thing you have to understand about that is I did film on the ceiling with her, and Wes chose to remove it for a variety of reasons.
Oh wow!
Amanda Wyss, the actress playing Tina, she's in her 90s. She's bare-legged, and she couldn't. They wanted a shot of her point of view, of Freddy dragging her by her ankles, from her point of view. She couldn't operate the camera. She's not union. She couldn't do it. Jacques Heitken's wife, Amy, she's in the union. So Amy pulled her jeans off. Amy's there in panties or cutoffs, I can't remember. They put blood on Amy's legs, and I dragged Amy, and Amy shot me between her legs. POV gynecological. But that look.
Wow.
So they shot that.
But
and I actually blew a kiss. When she was dying, and it would intercut with Amanda looking at me, and the boy on the bed looking up and just seeing his girlfriend alone. Wes decided not to use it, but he put it in one of the early cuts of the film because that was his sacrificial lamb of disconcerting, vicious, sexy, dark, violent imagery that he would tell the censors, "Oh, I love that. You won't let me have that." So he knew he was going to cut it. So he would cut that, but then he would say to them, "Well, I want to have Ronnie Blakely burning longer.
Oh my
I want to have more blood coming out of the Johnny Depp bed."
Another scene that you're physically not in.
So he would trade off this sequence that we shot on the ceiling that Freddy was actually there. So you would see what Tina saw in her dream as opposed to reality from the boy's point of view, which is just Tina on the ceiling, being dragged.
But then you fast forward to New Nightmare, then you have the hospital scene with Julie, and you are in that sequence.
Well, they
upside down.
They
and
left
everything.
me in that one.
Right.
Ever play Skin the Cat? They left me in that one,
which is it's kind of like an homage to the first one.
Well,
right?
it's a throwback.
Right.
Yeah, it's an Easter egg.
Right.
It's an homage.
And you're in that. You're upside down. Is the room spinning? How was that shot?
The room's up. The camera's upside down, and everything's fastened down. Like if everything on this set was fastened down with a Makita to the ground right now, and then they just turn this upside down. That's how they do that.
Wow.
That's the trick.
That's
the same room is used for Johnny Depp's bed as Tina's bedroom. And Johnny Depp's bed, and of course, is on the ceiling. Here's how they shot it. So Johnny Depp's bed's on the ceiling.
What?
And then all the liquid is above the bed. You can't see that. But now they shoot it. And it's flopped, so it looks regular. So that's just gravity using the blood. They got that idea from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
That's right.
With the elevators.
Yes.
And those elevators, when Stanley Kubrick shot it, that bank of elevators, it's upside down and tilted. And that's how they get all that stuff to rush out.
So when Wes kept you in the New Nightmare ceiling scene, was that kind of like more like, okay, finally I get to be back in that sequence that I...
Well, yeah. Well, only because I think when I did some dubbing, I think I saw a little piece of the sequence with me and Amanda. I don't think it's just in my mind's eye, the memory of doing it. I think I actually saw a little
from the original Nightmare.
Nightmare 1.
Yeah.
With Amanda Wiss, Tina. I think I saw a little bit of that because I think Wes was still putting together the piece, the one he was going to show the censors.
Incredible.
So I think I did a little laugh for that. He had me do a little, or something. But so it was fun to finally, have that, return to the sort of body of work of the Nightmare on the ceiling, the revolving rooms, that are sort of signature.
Yeah, the practical effects are incredible. One thing I want to bring up that I don't think is talked about enough when it comes to horror, and my wife and I speak about this a lot as well. Horror tends to be a very interesting cathartic experience for people who deal with trauma. And I think that when you watch horror films, and a lot of the characters that are in these films are dealing with horrendous trauma. And there's something about the performance and I think audiences are drawn to that because obviously people deal with trauma in their real lives. And there's something about horror that's psychologically interesting that we are drawn to watching people go through horrific experiences in that way. Can you speak to that theme of trauma and why psychologically we find, I guess the word comfort would be wrong, but we enjoy watching horror films? And I'm wondering if you can speak to that idea of catharsis and trauma in the horror genre.
Well, I've thought about this in terms of the younger audience that embraces horror. Of course, lots of people from different age groups and demographics do, but I think part of it is, especially, and we were talking about this earlier, when you attend a movie theater, and see it there with other people's energy in the dark. But it can be with 3 people on a couch in front of a flat screen too. The lights turned off, I think we don't address death in American society. We don't think about death. It's not discussed. Years ago, when I was in university, there was a coffee table book called Wisconsin Death Trip. And one of the things it taught me was that in the 1800s and post-Civil War, all the way up through World War I, every family had lost a child or a baby, or somebody been killed by a bear, or bit by a dog and had rabies, or died very young. A child died young from one of the various diseases that we've omitted now from our experience. And then there were the victims of the Civil War. Every bullet wound was amputated. So there were amputees everywhere in America. And after World War I, if you remember that great character, is it Boardwalk Empire? Danny Houston wears that thing over half of his face. Just such a great, brilliant thing. Look, Phantom of the Opera, the covered face. That particular device was everywhere in the world. You'd walk down the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and every couple of blocks you'd see somebody with that, from mustard gas, from facial wounds. They didn't have great plastic surgery yet. And so people just wore a plain mask over their, damaged, face. And so the concept of death and injury between, childhood deaths and illnesses and the results of two huge dark wars that America participated in, everybody understood that. And you can see these famous photographs that they used to take of the dead children to commemorate their short little lives that people would have on the mantelpiece in their homes and things. Okay, so now we have World War II, and made it through that one. We're the victors. Oh, we've worried about the atomic bomb. So that's that futuristic, robotic Godzilla, post-Cold War sci-fi fear. But we're not thinking, we think we're going to live forever. We got vitamin C. We're living longer, we're looking better. And that, as you follow that progression all the way up to now, with health foods and smoothies and drinks and massages and crystals and all of the great uses AI is accomplishing within biotech, to extend our thing. We all think we're going to live forever. I don't mean literally, but we all, we're going to have a good life. We're healthy. We don't think about death as much, if at all, except in the dark with your ticket stub clutched in your little wet hand, watching a horror movie. And then as we follow the journey of the final girl or the survivor girl or whoever your hero is, and we follow their survival or not, we invest cathartically with that character, and we confront our own mortality and death. And so I think that's what's going on, with the horror movie. And why we like it and why we need it and why we watch it as a culture. And the suspense movie, even the action movie to a degree. But I think that we really respond to that. We think because it's horror or fantasy, we think we're allowed, because it's an escape.
Yeah.
And yet then we get hooked. And we do actually, at some point, watching Heather Langenkamp or Jamie Lee Curtis or Sigourney Weaver, we also imagine ourselves in their boots. Walk a mile in my shoes,
Yeah.
final girl.
It's such a fascinating perspective. I mean, there's so much I want to dive into there, but there's a psychological reason for it. And I think you're really on to something.
I think that's
with that.
certainly one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I just think that I also think these films deal really well with cathartic, dramatic arcs. I think at the end of the day, like we think about the violence and the horror aspect of it, but the performances are remarkable. And you're like I mentioned this to you before we started. You've played Freddy 8 times on film, and obviously the last time you played him in a feature film was Freddy vs. Jason. And there was a time period between '94 and when you made Freddy vs. Jason where you weren't playing
10
Freddy
years, yeah.
right on film. And I was just curious if you remember the moment when you got on the Freddy vs. Jason set and became him again after all that time had passed. What that felt like to. Did you feel like you were kind of bringing him back to life after all that time had gone by?
It was much more. It's much simpler than that. I wish I could give you a great intellectual, a technique answer or something, but no, I was concerned. I was an old dog when I did Freddy versus Jason, and I just wanted to be sure could get out of bed on Monday. A lot of stunts. I'd read the script. It was an ambitious script, and I felt real secure working with Ken Kersinger because he was a stunt coordinator and a stunt man. So I felt really good with that. I had a really good stunt man on that. I did a lot of my own stuff, and I did all the water stuff. But when you see Freddy flying through the air on fire and things, that's not me. A couple of real high kicks that aren't me too. And I had an argument with Ronnie about whether Freddy should do karate, or kung fu, because I'd already mocked that in part 6. And I said, I think Freddy fights like a junkyard dog. I don't think he has, But Ronnie kind of was insistent with his Asian background that was something that we should put in the film, and that it would bring in not only a extra box office, a little homage, to Bruce Lee kind of attitude that Freddy would have, and that's also universal now after years and years of those movies. So I said okay, and I did a little bit of it. I did a little bit of that in Ford Fairlane too. But no, it was just me. I just wanted to get through it because it was really ambitious, really an ambitious film. And I had 2 distinct makeups in that. I had underwater sequences in that. And we shot up in Canada for Camp Crystal Lake. We had to accommodate that damn Jason. And so literally, in Canada, it's like on September 14th, you can walk around with your shirt off. On September 16th, it's like cold. You put the fleece on. It's boom, it's autumn. Boom, it's fall, like that. And we were at a lake. So we were working cold a lot, on that. I mean, we actually had a hot tub on the set for Monica Keena and Jason Ritter because they're running around in shirt sleeves at night doing all of that. And it was chilly. And they were wet because they're at the lake. And so they could jump, they were already wet, they could jump into the hot tub and get warm. But I think I remember once or twice there was a Navy SEAL there, to help us in the water stuff. And he had that, 10 milligram wetsuit, on that you can live in the Arctic in one of those.
To bring everything full circle, we're sitting here in LA right now recording this interview. Today is the 22nd. On the 31st, you're going to be receiving your Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. And well-deserved, and it's been a long time coming, and this is a remarkable achievement. And, I live here in LA, and every time I see those stars on the Walk of Fame, I still look down and I get excited. And now there's going to be one that says Robert Englund. And I'm just, could you speak about how you're feeling? When did you get the news this was happening? And will you go to your own star and see it after the ceremony?
With Windex, I'll go and clean it off.
Like the substance.
Find out what takes bubblegum off. Yeah. Dog urine. I think they use that to resurrect me in Nightmare 4. Anyway, it's such a wonderful thing. American thing that the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce has done. It's not a gimmick. It's a celebration of American popular culture. and international popular culture, which is, especially in these times, is such a great thing to have left in the fabric of society. You know, no matter our differences, you can always be in a bar and strike up a conversation about The Sopranos, or your favorite Clint Eastwood movie, or your favorite Sly Stallone movie, or your favorite Schwarzenegger movie, or your favorite rom-com, your favorite fantasy film, or your favorite superhero movie, your favorite horror. It's part of it, but it's more than that. Music, your favorite rap song, your favorite rock song. Somebody will go to a jukebox and put in a song that you haven't heard in years, and just give me some kind of sign, girl. Benton Wood will come on, I'm in Kentucky, and this is a song I haven't heard in years, and he was from Texas, and it's just this, and you remember that's a great, great song that unites us, and there's my father's favorite band leader is on Hollywood Boulevard. My father's drive-to disc jockey, Dick Whittington, who I met with my father at Disneyland when I was a child. And because my father loved him, because he listened to him every morning and he played some of my father's favorite music. But, and then you've got rap and you've got reggae, you've got classical music and classical musicians, you've got rock and roll, jazz, you've got variety show hosts, long forgotten from television, except they're not, because somebody will be walking down that street with their grandmother and that will make her day, and then you have the great, late night show hosts, there. And I'm just so honored to be in that diverse, wonderful group of people from music and movies and television and variety and radio and it's just this wonderful thing. And it's so personal to me because I lived, right behind Grauman's Chinese underneath the Yamashura Japanese restaurant. I lived on Franklin, a block away, with my roommates. You cross the street from the old Frank Lloyd Wright Jr. Bat Cave, where I think there's a theory now that the doctor that lived there might have been the killer in the Black Dahlia murders. I've been so part of it. I went to bargain matinees, double bills of Sam Peckinpah movies when I was catching up on my filmography.
Wild Bunch.
The bargain matinees, yeah, Wild Bunch, or I remember seeing the Battle of Cable Hogue there with Jason Robards and Stella Stevens and for two movies for $1 or something like that. Steak and Eggs for $1.49 when I was a starving actor. Where my star is going is in front of Larry Edmonds, the famous cinema bookstore on Hollywood Boulevard.
Wow.
And my Hollywood roommates worked there, and we shared an old rundown Volkswagen Bug without brakes. The brakes were shot. Had to just downshift all the time.
And your star is going to be outside that store.
And shared outside on the sidewalk. Now listen to this. And they worked in their lunch hour, with their little lunch bags of peanut butter and jelly or, and carrots and celery sticks. And they worked on a screenplay. They wrote a little movie called The Lost Boys.
Wow.
And when I helped contribute that title.
What?
And, they call it the Street of Broken Dreams. Didn't break their dreams. Janice Fisher and James Jeremiah.
Those were your roommates?
They were my roommates. And I'm getting a star there now. I've come full circle. And I may be synonymous with nightmares, but my dreams came true too.
Wow. That just gave me absolute chills.
Well, no, it's true though. I mean, I just remember all of that, and going to movies with my parents in the glamour era of Hollywood Boulevard, because Hollywood Boulevard's had its ups and downs, and it's coming back great now. But it's and they have the Oscars there, which has been a great contribution. But there was wonderful places there. I mean, the Pantages, or you'd go to Grauman's Chinese, or the Egyptian, the wonderful movie palaces, the great old restaurants that are there. People don't realize Tom Mix used to tie his horse up at a post rail in front of Musso Frank's, the same restaurant where Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt drink
Once Upon a Time
in and in Hollywood. And it's, I had my very first Hollywood lunch there, and
Wow.
the back of my chair touched a woman with a high-pitched English accent. And it was Elsa Lancaster, the Bride of Frankenstein.
What?
Yeah, this is 1972,
Wow.
53 years ago. The boy who would be Freddy Krueger and the woman who had been the Bride of Frankenstein sat back to back, and I learned how to order, the chiffonade salad, and the minute steak and the half avocado cocktail, and eavesdropped on her giggling with her entourage. I think one of the boys was Roddy McDowell, one of her entourage back then.
Wow.
And so it's real personal to me. It's not like I want to thank the Academy. It's not like about my talent to me, or about what, even whether I earned it or not. It's that I have so much of a relationship with the town, and paying my dues so many years, and so many friends that have had success and failure, and yet it's come full circle for me. And it's just, wow, it's so personal and nostalgic. I'm going to worry about being verklempt, as Mike Myers says, I'm verklempt, because it's just everywhere I look. My original agent is on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea. My very first agent. I used to go to an art studio with a friend of mine who were artists, and we would watch the Christmas parade, and get drunk on vodka and grape juice. We were just starving, all of us, broke, sharing one car between three people at one time. And I remember all of that, and we all got through it, and all our dreams came true. But it's that's the thing for me. The nostalgia level is going to be so intense. My favorite dive bar, Bordner's on Las Palmas. I kept the seat warm there for years, waiting to call my agent at the end of the day. You check in with your agent, and I didn't want to hover at my agent's, in the outer office. That was kind of pathetic, So I'd go down to this great dive bar, and you'd see everybody in there, Tom Waits.
Wow.
You'd see everybody in there. Yeah, it was great.
That's incredible. Have you ever seen the movie Babylon, Damien Chazelle's movie?
Yeah.
And this is a question I often ask actors, but what you said kind of brought this up to me. Do you remember the scene towards the end of the film when Brad Pitt's character is struggling with the idea that the movie business is going from silent era to talkies?
Yeah.
And he's kind of being shoved out in a way. And he goes to visit Jean Smart, who's kind of that journalist at the time. And she writes this piece about kind of the end of his career in a way. And she says, obviously he's clearly upset about it. And she says to him, I'm paraphrasing, but in 100 years, someone's going to turn on one of your films and you're going to flicker back to life. And that scene just stuck with me so much because, one, I think Damien Chazelle is one of the best filmmakers working today. But what he's tapped into is this immortalization of what you do as a craft, meaning that, not to be dark, but when you die, and your work is going to live on past you. So someone's going to turn on one of your films, a show, anything you've done, and you're going to come back to life, even though it's a character that's still you on that screen in a way. I'm just curious what that means to you, kind of in a similar element to what you're saying about the stars on the Walk of Fame. But what does that mean to you to know that you kind of will live forever in cinema?
Well, one thing that encourages me about the internet and the size of the menu that's growing that you can access in terms of finding films and actors is now we discover, and more you can see actors from the 30s and 40s especially, that were ahead of their time, or actually as great, if not greater, than some of our best people working today, like Daniel Day-Lewis. And people
I'm in
like
a Buster
that.
Keaton phase right now.
You see these people that are just certain. We've heard about how great and big she was and what a huge international star. But if you watch Greta Garbo in Ninotchka, it's phenomenal. And if you watch Melvin Douglas in I Never Sang for My Father with Gene Hackman, or in HUD with Paul Newman, and then you go back to Ninotchka, and you realize these people were amazing. And I just love the idea that somebody's going to catch my fight scene, and my energy in Stay Hungry by Bob Rafelson, someday, or somebody's going to, rediscover a little film I did in England called The Last Showing with Finn Jones from Game of Thrones, and they'll see that. I know that Freddy's sort of locked in now as part of the horror pantheon. So I'm really grateful for that, and that's that one. But because there are so many fans of that, they find other things, and there's nothing that an actor loves more than for somebody to come up to him and remember some piece of business or shtick or a delivery of a line. It could be, and it could be something on television that you did in a guest star role or something.
MacGyver, Knight Rider.
It could be, a moment from Bones.
Or Chuck.
Or a moment from Criminal Minds, or you never know. And that's wonderful. Or they've seen an old feature that you've done, I love getting that feedback. And I love them remembering a moment that really meant a lot when I did it, and that kind of erases, just in terms of being an actor and dealing with rejection, it kind of erases some of those rejections or the roles I almost had. When somebody can come up to me and tell me that they saw an old TV movie I did, with Peter Strauss or something, and that they really liked this moment here or this choice here, and that's a great thing for actors. Fans should understand that it really means a lot to us. But the posterity thing, I know I got my foot in the door a little bit because of Freddy.
Yeah.
That it's
But
one
you're
of the
so much
one of the
more
most
than that.
successful franchises, blah, blah, blah. And and New Line Cinema was called the house that Freddy built and all that. And they've done so much great work with independent films and other genre classics, and a lot of respect to them too for really opening the doors a lot for the black audience over at New Line, and other genres and animation and all kinds of fun stuff. But the posterity thing, I just love the fact, for me, that because the Nightmare franchise is semi-iconic at the very least, I will get, just by happy accident, people have access now and will discover other stuff I've done. I mean, and it's weird, and I'm not talking about, there's some stuff's just, my agent, you always do a hit show, no matter what, because that residual comes back trifold. But there's this Me TV now and the TV Guide channel, and I'm getting residuals now from shows I forgot I did. It's been that long since I've had a residual for them.
Do you get physical checks?
Well, let alone recent stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's just so wonderful to know that you're kind of out there in the cosmos, living, that somebody's watching you at midnight in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And someone's watching you on afternoon TV in Argentina.
You're on somewhere right now.
Yeah, somewhere. I'm on right now. Yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely...
Yeah, I mean, what's great? There's a Bones channel, and there's like a Criminal Minds channel, and there's a Charmed channel, and there's a Supernatural channel. Yeah. Right now, they're on nonstop. They're in constant rotation, like an old rock and roll radio station.
Incredible.
And so somewhere I am. I literally am on somewhere right now.
I'll get you out of here on these last couple ones. I was lucky enough recently, my wife and I went to the Sony lot and saw a 70 millimeter presentation of Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh.
And there is nothing, in my opinion, that compares to watching a film through film projection. Yeah. Also films that are shot on film. And obviously, I know the Freddy films were shot on film. There's something about film that's magical. And I know that we're living in a digital age now. There are still filmmakers who shoot films, Spielberg, Scorsese, Christopher Nolan. And so, Celine Song is an amazing filmmaker as well. But there's something about film that I find to be so special. And because you kind of came up in an era where film was the primary things to use. I'm curious what your thoughts are on film, shooting on film projection. Do you still seek out film projection? Is that something that you're into? Because there's nothing like that 70 millimeter Lawrence of Arabia experience. And the projectionist behind me was switching reels. There were 13 reels. It was one of the most remarkable things I'd ever seen. David Lean, that left to right performance of Peter O'Toole as the journey is continuing. There's so much to learn from that. I'm just curious, like, where you are in film versus digital.
Well, there's a thing in art called absence, in a painting, a modern painting. And there's that great line about that John Huston supposedly gave somebody, which is, or John Ford, about the horizon line, and
Yes.
where to put the horizon line.
It's at the end of Spielberg's Fablemans. They have that moment where David Lynch plays John Ford.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's true. And when you see great films projected correctly on the right ratio, it's an amazing gift. And you don't have to seek out everything that way. You can watch a nice, TCM Maltese Falcon. You're not losing anything.
Sure.
Or Casablanca. Those were low budget, medium budget Warner Brothers programmers. But when we got into the age of epic filmmaking, I mean, the professionals with Burt Lancaster and Lee Marvin and Claudia Cardinale, and it's purple prose dialogue, but it's great stuff.
Yeah.
And Lord Jim, again, with Peter O'Toole. And you see some of these great, great films. I mean, Furiosa on the big screen.
Oh, yeah.
Blew my mind.
George Miller is...
The whole audience was ducking and in our seats. This is just a year ago.
Yeah.
A year ago. And so there's that great experience. And yes, some of those on a big flat screen, probably okay. But here's the thing about acting on film. It's a different pressure.
It's precious, right?
Yeah, you only get a certain amount of takes. I mean, and then you have to worry about waste, and getting it right. And so there's more of that opening night theater energy about it, because they're only going to print 1 or 2 takes because it's cost prohibitive to do more than that. And some directors only shoot a couple of takes. It doesn't get deeper than 3 or 4 ever.
Doesn't Eastwood do 1 take?
Well, he believes there is a magic on all first takes.
Yeah.
And there's mistakes on all first takes. And it might be camera, it might be sound, it might be actors off their marks. But there's also a real palatable magic in a first take. Like there's a real palatable magic on an opening night and in the theater. So there's that. There's also, you're just a little more on your game. There's a thing I never like to call cut, but I have.
As an actor?
As an actor, since I've become an actor who doesn't audition anymore, I've called cut occasionally. And I mean, I can count it on one hand, the times I've had to do it. But I know I'm wasting everybody's time if we don't stop and start over. On digital, I don't have to worry about that. I never call cut. I just say pick up. And I just start again from wherever I fell out. And it doesn't matter because it's digital. I love that. I love that because I don't have the onus on me of being an actor who went up and thinks he has to go back to the beginning to get his... I can't pick it up cold because emotionally I'm not there. And I know that on film you can do pickups too, and they can cut to the other actor then, but you got to make sure the other actor is 100% there in the scene. So I love that part of digital. And I also love, a video assist, with digital and being able to see where I am in the frame. But I just like to look at it once, and then I understand the choreography or the blocking of the director. When they tell you, sometimes they'll tell you something like, can you really hug the wall? Robert, next take, hug the wall when you cross in. What is it? And because you have to reverse yourself and look to see. If you watch it on video, you say, oh, I see. And you realize that on your exit, it's real strong. They're getting half of your face, and you can still be thinking in that one eye, because it's, that's what he wants there. He wants that wipe because he's going to cut there. And you see the director's mind at work. So that's a great gift for an actor. And I love that. On the other hand, with video assist, the day gets longer and you get less. Because everybody wants to see themselves and check themselves. And early on, I was told by a couple of people not to watch dailies and not to watch yourself. I can, and I can be useful. The problem is that you see yourself in a master. There's no cutaways. All the dead air's there. All your mistakes are there, even though some of the take is great. And the other thing is, and this is can be dangerous for some people, you're seeing yourself like you've never seen yourself before, you know, and it can imprint on your brain. And now you'll dream about it. Because you've seen that take over and over and over in dailies on a white sheet on location, you know, in a Days Inn somewhere, and everybody's got a cocktail, and you're watching yesterday's work over and over and over without the cutaways, without it cutting away from you to the other actor or whatever. It's just played out, that big master on you, and that can get in your dream state. You know?
Really?
Yeah, oh, yeah, you dream about yourself because you've never seen yourself like that.
I've heard actors dream as their characters sometimes too.
I've never dreamt in character, but I've seen myself, you know, in the part, or I'm haunted by my performance and I want to change something that I didn't like.
Yeah.
See, and that happens to us on the way home from work too.
Oh yeah.
You know, you get in a car, you're driving, and you go, "Oh God, here's what that line means." Or, "Oh, now I know what that scene's about." Or, "Oh, I said that line wrong." I remember. One of my famous lines is, "You're all my children now." Well, that's wrong. That's how I say it in the movie. It should have been, "You're all my children now." He's taking it. I've got you from your parents. I own you. I've got you. I've got your subconscious. I own you. I'm going to come haunt you. You're all my children now. Not "you're all my children now," which is what I said. And it looks great. And I hit my marks and I spread my arms. And I'm backlit like a god. An evil god, but still, that thing, it haunts you all the time.
That still haunts you, that line.
No, but it did that night when I drove home from Pasadena, you know, and I was the last person to leave the set because it took forever to get the makeup off because it had fused itself to my ear because I walked through a flaming arbor 10 times.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'll do the stunt. I'm okay. And then my stuntman went off and got his SAG card because he did a line. You know, and so he got dialogue and his Screen Actors Guild card, and I got an ear and a neck that melted to my neck. You know, Kevin Yeager and I were there till dawn, but
wow.
But no, on the way home, you know, I'm somewhere on the Hollywood freeway, and I went, "Oh no," you know.
Do you call Wes and say, "Can I redo that?"
No, it wasn't Wes; it was Jack Shoulder, but I couldn't call him because that location's gone.
Oh, wow.
That's $100,000 just to get back in that house and that backyard and that pool, you know.
Wow.
And no, so I just say, let it live. It was in the moment. It had I said it with a nice scan, and I wasn't posing it. I just hadn't thought about that line. You know, I hadn't thought enough about that line and what he's really saying there.
All right, I'm going to wrap us up with 2 rapid-fire questions. The first one is this. What is the movie you've seen the most in your life, and why?
I think it's Anatomy of a Murder, directed by Otto Preminger, starring Jimmy Stewart, Lee Remick, Eve Arden, Ben Gazzara, a great performance by Arthur O'Connell, the debut performance of George C. Scott, and Murray Hamilton, the mayor from Jaws, in another brilliant performance. And there's something about it. I can watch it over and over and over again. Very underrated Preminger film. Best-selling book, Saul Bass titles, but that's probably the movie I've seen the most. After that, maybe Bertolucci's 1900 with De Niro and Gerard Depardieu and Burt Lancaster and Sterling Hayden.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Sterling Hayden.
Oh my God. So those probably the 2 the most, you know, yeah.
And then the last question for you is this. This is something I like to ask any guest on the show. If you could erase the memory of any film that you've ever seen and rewatch it again for the first time, meaning you get to experience the movie for the first time with fresh eyes, like you don't remember any of the film at all, what would that film be?
Streetcar Named Desire.
Why?
Because I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of the theatricality involved in it.
Okay.
And that it's that lyric, Tennessee Williams writing. And so it's now I have to pick a way to watch it when I watch it.
Huh.
I'll just watch Brando, or I'll just watch Vivian Leigh, or I'll just watch Carl Malden, or I'll just watch Kim Stanley, or I'll just watch the direction, or I'll just look at the frame and the scenery and the lighting. So I wish I could be a virgin,
Yeah.
you know, and let that wash over me again. Most people that are still alive that saw Brando do that on Broadway, it changed their lives.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of no applause, of people just sitting there stunned. And I've heard stories of people that went right out and went to the box office and bought a ticket for the next day, you know. And I've heard stories of people seeing it 4, 5, 6 times because they'd never seen anything like that. It was one of those shifts, you know, and we have them, you know. SNL was a shift in comedy. Sid Caesar was a shift in comedy. Lenny Bruce was a shift in comedy. Eddie Murphy,
Jim Carrey.
Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
But there's other ones. There's subtler ones. I know people that saw Gene Wilder off Broadway in the Billy Bibbit role, the Brad Dourif role, in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Kirk Douglas as McMurphy, that said he was just unbelievable. Now, if you want me to underline that, Bonnie and Clyde, they kidnap a bank teller, Gene Hackman and his wife, Estelle Parsons, Faye Dunaway, Warren Beatty, and who do they got in the back seat that they've kidnapped the bank teller? Gene Wilder. And he improvs on them. They go out and they get burgers. They're all hungry because they've just robbed a bank and shot a couple of cops. They're hungry. They're on the road. There's dust behind them. They're tearing down the road in a Model T. What does Gene? He complains about the food. No. That's my set. It's not yours. That's mine. I don't want cheese. He's just Gene Wilder. And the other one that changed everything, and she's gone now, God love her, Eileen Brennan, and I starred with her in a movie, and I was in 2 movies with her.
What were the 2 films?
Well, I was in a movie called Hustle with Catherine Deneuve and Burt Reynolds, and she and Ben, the wonderful, great Western actor. I'm forgetting his last name. Last Picture Show.
I'll add it in.
Anyway, but she played. Their daughter's kidnapped and used by rich people in it, and they're very damaged, you know. And but Eileen Brennan did a play called Little Mary Sunshine off Broadway, and apparently she was so brilliant. Now it was, you know, it closed early, but people that saw that performance, a kind of Snidely Whiplash, Dudley Do-Right, a kind of camp parody of, you know, the girl being tied to the tracks and all that melodrama. People that saw her in that said comedy turned a corner. She did a kind of work like Madeline Kahn, a kind of work, you know, like Cloris Leachman in Young Frankenstein, a kind of free work in comedy that no one had seen before. And I also have heard that Larry Hagman, our beloved JR, did a play called The Beauty Part with Bert Lahr, The Cowardly Lion, was closed by the New York newspaper strike. And people said that Larry Hagman was so brilliant in that and so wonderful and took the straight man to a whole new level, you know, like Dean Martin had done, you know, just really made the straight man a remarkable archetype in that. So those are those things that, you know, would be nice to go back and revisit and be a fly on the wall or be in a time machine to see. But yeah, if I could be a virgin for anything, it would be Streetcar Named Desire.
Great answer. And TCM, if you're watching this, get Robert Englund on your show because you have the deepest film knowledge of anyone
I don't.
I'm
just an old man.
No, you know your stuff. You know your stuff. This has been an absolute honor having you on my show. Thank you for talking about craft and your performances. Congratulations on the Hollywood Star on the Walk of Fame.
Thank you so much.
Very well deserved.
And listen, for people that just have experienced the Nightmare films on VHS, and that might be their favorite film that they only saw with mom and dad, you know, and a pizza getting warm and cold and a beer getting warm or whatever. But you know, in your house, the Nightmare Collection's coming out, and it's
4K.
You know, yeah, and you guys, it's ultra high def. And the thing is, there are some of them that are just going to blow your mind.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see 4 and 5.
I was watching New Nightmare before we prepping for this interview in the 4K on the new release. it looks like it was shot yesterday.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I saw Rear Window on 4K, and it blew my mind.
Right?
It blew my mind.
The transfers, like, because I'm really deep into VistaVision right now because of One Battle After Another, because Paul Thomas Anderson shot it that way. So I've been going back and watching To Catch a Thief, North by Northwest, Vertigo, The Searchers. I
saw Vertigo in VistaVision.
Did you?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah, when it came out.
Oh my gosh, I would.
And it's amazing. Yeah, there's almost curvature of the earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would do anything to see that movie in VistaVision because I'm becoming like, because VistaVision was essentially an answer to CinemaScope, right? In a way.
I remember being in I think I was in New Zealand with my wife.
Wow.
And we found, I think it was My Fair Lady, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but it was something that was shot a certain way, and I had never seen it like that because it was projected correctly. It was like, wow.
Have you ever seen a movie in IMAX 70 millimeter?
Yeah.
Like on 143, like the Christopher. Are you a Nolan guy? You like Christopher Nolan?
I love Christopher Nolan, but my neighbor and friend, he hired me for my first voiceover. And he worked with me on Big Wednesday with John Milius, is Greg McGillivray.
Oh, wow.
And Greg plays in that world a lot, IMAX world.
Yeah.
He really knows that stuff. I mean, if you've ever seen any of his films, the surfing is as good as going at an e-ticket at Magic Mountain.
Yeah.
Just the sequences, All
right, we do got to end this.
All right, we do. We're going to talk all night.
Honestly, we could because you are my type
Order a pizza.
Yes, let's get some pizza. I'm down. I'm getting you on again sometime.
Right,
We're going to talk filmmaking.
Okay, thank you so
Robert,
much.
Thank you so much.
All right.